Not only did Congress authorize the use of force, it is briefed on every strike that America takes. Every strike. That includes the one instance where we targeted an American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki, the Chief of External Operations for AQAP. Now, this week I authorized the declassification of this action and the deaths of 3 other Americans in drone strikes to facilitate transparency and debate on this issue and to dismiss some of the more outlandish claims that have been made. For the record, I do not believe it would be constitutional for the government to target and kill any U.S. citizen with a drone or with a shotgun without due process. Nor should any president deploy armed drones over U.S. soil.
The president defended the use of drones today, as we said, during a sweeping counterterrorism speech. He said there must be, quote, near certainty no civilians would die in such strikes. I want to bring in our panel on this. We'll also talk about Gitmo. O'Brien Murray, Republican political consultant, managed the campaign of former Congressman Bob Turner. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author, and Andrew Whitman, who you met, our senior political correspondent. Okay, first let's deal with drones, because polls came out, Dom, public America, they like it. President acknowledged here that, yeah, some people died, including Americans have died with this, and stuff that they maybe haven't come forward as much. That you got the impression they're going to be more transparent going forward. It just reminded me, this was a constitutional law professor before he became a politician and a president. All of a sudden, Republican or Democrat, you like the toys, and you like the power that comes with being commander-in-chief. It's interesting because the more you read, this is not, while it's a precise piece of technology, it is not without unwanted casualties. And there's a lot of debate about how ultimately effective it is on hearts and minds as much as getting the bad guys.
Excellent point, Richard. Professor Obama back in Chicago, and who did not support the war in Iraq, you can't envision a scenario where he would support use of drones and so on. But with that said, I think that it's become a way of life after we watch what happened in Boston and so on, at the marathon. And Americans, we've just, whether you like it or not, these things are happening, whether it's a drone or some other technology. But I think Americans are supporting this in polls because we want to feel safe. And it's just so, but the question is, who controls it? Yeah. Because under a different president, we might feel different. And who's going to order these
We got one big thing. It was CIA. Now it's FBI. I'm sorry. Now it's the Defense Department that's going to have a sign off on this. You get the impression after one of these, we're not going to have to play, you know, look under the shell here to see, did we have our fingerprints on it? The president, you get the impression, is going to take more ownership if we basically order these attacks than we've had in the past. It's interesting, but you still didn't get the clear answer one way or the other how this thing's going to work going forward. I guess we're okay with it as a country here, but it is, I don't know. If it's okay over there, what about over here?
But let's back up. First, he's a commander-in-chief, number one. That's what counts, number one as a president, no matter what party you are. There are rules of engagement, whether you're a private on patrol somewhere in this world, and you know what's coming down from your commanding officers of what's got to be done for rules of engagement. So whether it's the CIA or Department of Defense, the important thing is we protect America's interest, foreign and domestic, at this point. Which brings your question about what you can do domestically. I think once you do anything on U.S. soil, you open up a whole entire Pandora's box. Because there are rules. There are laws that do not let the president do what he wants with U.S. troops on U.S. soil. That's the same thing we had a problem in New Orleans. You couldn't send in the troops to go protect Americans in there, posi comitatus. That's the challenge.
Right now, we are using drones here, albeit very differently than how we're using them in Yemen or Pakistan. We're using them here, but here's the
observational, though. It's no different than our border. Our border, we can send our troops to defend our border, but once they're on U.S. soil, we cannot fire at them, no matter who it is, illegals and so forth, coming across the border at that point. That's one of the challenges. When I was stationed in El Paso, that was one of the big issues.
But looking internationally, I think it's heartening for a lot of people to hear that the president wants to limit the use of drones or at least scale them back. This is from a president who multiplied the number of times that George Bush ever used them. But something that Dominic mentioned, the institutional controls on this, codifying those controls so that going forward, there's the same standards and practices that are in place, whether it's for the remainder of the Obama administration or for whomever the next president is, so that we're following one clear set of rules. Right now, the next president could come in and immediately say, we're going to change the rules and do X instead of
But
Y.
that's the commander-in-chief's choice. Though. But one quick thing on that, don't forget, though, is that since George Bush has been president, it's been 5 years. Technology changes a tremendous amount, and these are much more precise now than they were 5 years ago. You also keep troops out of harm's way by using drones instead of aircraft, and you have a better accuracy.
Let's get guys with the remaining time in this segment to the issue that's got more contentiousness still, and that's Gitmo. Privately, they say the president's pretty mad because he thought 5 years ago when he got elected this thing would be already done and resolved right now. It's not, Dominic. And he used the time today to say enough already here. This just doesn't make sense. This is inefficient here. It's expensive. There's no rule of law. What are we waiting on? I don't know that he's going to get any different answer in the next 3 years.
I don't see a scenario either where it may change. But the bottom line, though, Richard, is that they've got to go somewhere. I mean, right? 2/3 of these detainees are on a hunger strike as we speak. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, and maybe it's just my personal opinion, Richard, I'd rather have them there than have them on U.S. soil.
But that brings up the other part, though, too. You said when he ran the first time, it was an issue. It was a campaign issue. He wanted to shut it down. He didn't do that in the first 4 years.
Stop.
And
He signed
now
an executive order his first day in office, and then Congress passed a law forbidding him to do it. So if you want to blame Congress.
But where was this speech 2 years ago?
Well, he gave the speech on the campaign trail multiple times, and then he didn't revisit the issue, which was
He does it on day one of his administration. And Congress basically says, nice try, not so fast. How is it his fault?
Well, let's back up. Because they disagree and they want to find things, different ways to do it. Now that he's going to try to force feed it, he is not worried about getting reelected. Right now, he can sit here and say, I'm going to put these prisoners at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas. He can put them anywhere he wants and not have the reelection repercussions that he was worried about 2 years ago.
But he's banned by U.S. law from doing so. He's asking Congress to change the law that they put in place after he signed that executive order. So he's working legislatively to try to get it changed. But in the overall, Guantanamo Bay is a national embarrassment. It absolutely is. We've got people who are being held without charges, without due process. We have people who are never going to face trial because we've tortured them and we can't put them on trial, and we don't want to release them either. We've put them in this permanent limbo, and not only is it a national embarrassment for the people here, but it makes us look terrible around the world. How can we have any moral high ground when we're holding people without rights?
But do you really think Americans care about what's going on in Guantanamo?
I don't think they do. As they absolutely should.
All.
We care about our safety and our protection and defending our country. And when
nobody could care less.
You can always take these big picture views, but the question isn't how do we feel about having terror suspect exit Gitmo, it's how would we feel if you were held at Gitmo without any rights, without any trial.
But he's an American citizen.
When I was an officer in the Army, I gave up my rights as a U.S. citizen and had to follow the Uniform Code of Military Justice. When you are in military attacks in any way, shape, or form and wearing a uniform, or in this case of terrorism, we don't know what our opponents are wearing as a uniform. Right. Therefore, there's a whole different set of laws that apply.
But if I follow that logic, then whoever we round up, if we decide I call him an enemy combatant, okay, I can lock him up, throw away the key, and he doesn't even get his day of trial. Now, here's the biggest flaw with the argument is, and it sounds like I'm trying to defend the people in Gitmo who I really don't care about, but here's the problem. We already know. We've kicked from Gitmo. How many people that we found that they did nothing wrong? We never charged them with a single thing. We said, be on your way. We've already established that we didn't get this thing right from get.
Well, let's back up. One of the things the president did say today was that there are a number of people there who the evidence does not apply to anymore because it's disappeared. And that's what happens in the course of any kind of trial issue that takes longer and longer time. That's very different than saying to somebody, they did absolutely positively nothing wrong. Here's a clean bill of health. By the way, Andrew,
Andrew as a U.S. disappeared, so sorry.
And Andrew, as a U.S. citizen, is not the same thing as the men that are out there at Gitmo. It's very different.
Yeah, it does. I'll grant you and Andrew that it's a scary scenario. But when it comes down to safety of Americans versus, frankly, the rights of a few that are not citizens, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is.
I also think that one of the issues, too, is that had he done this years ago and had he really gone out and fought it, he would have lost points in his public polls.
Would have.
And that's one reason he's doing it.
It's not popular.
The second thing is,
it's not popular. It's easy to just say throw them up
if
away
he
and
was
lock
the
away the
one
key.
that said so-and-so should leave Gitmo right now and put them out on the streets or give them back to their countries, and they were captured again committing any terrorist acts against the United States, that would have been a killer for him as far as re-election. He has no re-election to worry about right now. He's willing to go out on a limb, expend his political capital to try to do something I disagree with, which is adamant, is obvious from the show.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about the impact of the election or the impact in the polls. You're absolutely right. But it's just wrong. It's just wrong on every single level.
Our country?
No, it's wrong.
can't
It's
play
wrong
that
to
card.
just
Sure,
abandon.
No, you can't say the options aren't leave it where it is, or tomorrow open up the doors, give them a first class ticket wherever they want to do, and say goodbye. That's not what it is.
You can't do that.
You can put them. First of all, you give everybody their day in court. Okay, you put them through due process, and literally the best justice system in the world that we can afford here. I have more faith in our justice system maybe than you do. At the end of the day, the bad guys are going to go to a bad place. But we've already kicked out of this place guys that could be bad guys, but because we never follow due process, they're out there walking around someplace. We're not doing it right the way it is right now. I just don't know why we're fighting so hard to keep a flawed system.
These are basically enemy combatants. There's a different set of laws when you're in the military.
Okay,
but they were captured. Some of these individuals were captured by the other countries because there was a bounty on their head because of what they had done.
But we haven't even given them a military tribunal yet because we don't have the evidence. So what basis would you like to judge them on?
Every case is different.
There's
but
no
the most
basis
important
for some
thing
of these
under
people.
any one of these cases is the protection of the United States and its interest and its people.
If our Americans got rounded up by another country, they call them enemy combatants, and they say they never get a day in court here and they never see the light of day. How would we feel?
Well, first off,
how would we feel about it?
But the hypothetical you're posing is one of if you're in the military is different than if you are.
Who says they're in the military? They're not part of a unified military group. At the worst, they're terrorists, so they're not part of a former military outfit or representing a nation here. They're broadly termed enemy combatants. I'm sure most of these guys are the scum of the earth. That's not my point. And if you want to lock them up and throw away the key, fine. But at least do due process. And then we don't have to answer this question, that we make up the rules as we go along. That's my only point.
This comes back to the same thing, though, when you in Boston. When they captured the men, or the one anyway, that had committed the bombing at that point, what were they going to do? Read him his rights or interrogate him for a period of time?
But when they didn't,
that's a different.
But here's your point that you're leaving out. When they didn't read him his Miranda rights, they already knew that anything they learned from him at that point would not have been admissible in a court of law. A court of law that he will see the light of day in the surviving brother.
They had 48 hours, but he could talk for the 48 hours.
But the point is, they said, hey, there may be some imminent threat. We're going to risk here losing that intelligence because we got so much other evidence on the guy. But he will see a courtroom. None of these people see a courtroom. And I don't think that makes America safer. We can debate this thing, I have a feeling, in a circle over and over again. All right, O'Brien, Dominic, guys, thank you very much. When we come back, we're going to dig into the Jersey gubernatorial race. Chris Christie's popularity, no matter what Dominic says, is through the roof. But some say, so are unemployment numbers. What will it mean for his candidacy, and how much is his governor going to win by? Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.